Well, hello there, Old Man Kelly here, Jeff to my friends, and you can call me Jeff. This week I'm going to talk about the 1928 film The Passion of Joan of Arc. Yes, this is a silent film, and when many people think of silent films, they think of things like this. The Passion of Joan of Arc isn't one of those. It's one of the most intriguing films ever made. Everything from the story to the way it was made to the history of the film is a story within itself. But I would say one of the most interesting aspects is its star, Falconetti, who plays Joan. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that this might be one of the most astonishing performances ever committed to film. She's called Renee Janine Falconetti, Maria Falconetti, Marie Falconetti, Renee Marie Falconetti, but most people just refer to her as Falconetti. She was a very successful French theater actor before taking on this role. This was her second and last film she ever made. She was 33 years old when she played the 19-year-old girl. Now, the film is the story of the last days of Joan of Arc, her trial and ultimate execution, and that's not a spoiler. Everybody knows that the 19-year-old girl was burned at the stake. It was directed by Carl Theodor Dreyer, who co-wrote the script. He spent a year and a half researching the story and based it on the original transcripts of Joan's horrific trial. He took the 29 interrogations that took place over 18 months and condensed it down to a single day. And it doesn't deal with her alleged crimes, more with Joan's faith in God, the terrifying interrogations, the psychological and physical torture, and the deception and corruption that was used to get her confession. Now, the legend goes that Dreyer got this amazing performance from Falconetti by being very cruel to her, doing things like making her kneel on concrete floors and such, just the way Joan would have, and that he brought her to the brink of emotional collapse. Gene and Dale Drum, who wrote a biography on Dreyer, said these stories were based on rumor. In speaking specifically of working with Falconetti, Dreyer said, "Falconetti's tears were from her own free will, from the heart." And, "In general, I believe that a director should nag the actor as little as possible. I want to use this opportunity to kill the myth that I, in Joan of Arc, forced Falconetti in her performance." And when Falconetti was asked what she thought of Dreyer, she said, "I'm astonished at his industry, patience, and strength of will. He was never too tired to begin again if a scene wasn't right or if he felt someone wasn't in the right mood. I think he's the ideal director." Does that sound like the comments of a woman who was tortured? The look of the film is very unusual, very daring for its day. Dreyer had huge expensive sets built, but we never see him in the film. There's no establishing shots. He shot the film almost entirely in close-ups. Dreyer said, "There were questions that were answered, very short, very crisp. Each question, each answer, quite naturally called for a close-up. In addition, the result of the close-up was that the spectator was as shocked as Joan was receiving the questions, tortured by them." As American film theorist and film historian David Bordwell pointed out, one of the film's more remarkable features is its disorienting sense of space as constructed through shot composition, editing, and camera movement. Without necessarily sharing Jean's point of view, we get the feeling for the emotional stress in which she has been placed. Now, this film was made only 8 years after Joan was canonized as a saint by the Roman Catholic Church, and it was quickly criticized upon its release, mainly because Dreyer was neither a Catholic nor French, so that pissed a lot of people off. Before its premiere, several cuts were made by order of the Archbishop of Paris and by government censors. Ultimately, the film was a box office failure, mainly because by the time it was released, talkies were the fashion of the day. Now, the original cut of the film, the negative, was destroyed in a fire about a year after its release. So Dreyer, who was known for taking a lot of takes, patched together a new version using alternate takes. But oddly, this version as well was destroyed in a fire. So for years, this was one of those lost films with only a few crappy versions available for viewing. Then in 1951, Joseph Marie Leduca, an Italian journalist, novelist, art critic, and film historian, found a copy of the negative of Dreyer's second version, and for some reason he made changes to it and tried to make it into a talkie. Why, I don't know. Dreyer himself objected to these cuts and wrote him letters explaining why. For many years, Leduca's version was the only one available for viewing. Then, strangely, in 1981, at a psychiatric hospital in Norway, an employee found several film canisters in a closet that were labeled The Passion of Joan of Arc. He sat at the Norwegian Film Institute for 3 years before somebody finally got around to looking at them and discovered it was Dreyer's original cut before government and church censors got to it. No one is quite sure how it got there. So yes, this is the version that Turner Classic Movies shows every now and again, and it's as close as we're going to get to what Dreyer intended. Now I could talk about this film for hours, and if what I've said already doesn't pique your interest, then no talking in the world is going to help you. Personally, I'm moved by this film every time I see it, and I've never seen anything like it before or since. It's a must for anyone who has any interest in film or film history. Now, something interesting about this film star Falconetti is that in the theater she was known mainly for playing comedies, and as soon as the shoot ended for this film, she went back to comedies. Now, on a bit of a downer, she didn't have a very good end. Apparently she had emotional problems, and she ended up starving herself to death while trying to lose weight in Argentina in 1946, and she was still fairly young. Now, I found one good version of this film on the internet that's in English, and it's over at Vimeo, and I'll have a link to it below. And I've gone on way too long. I could go on forever. This information only scratches the surface. There's a lot more out there. You should take a look. Now, if you could, before you leave, can you comment, like, subscribe, all the usual YouTube crap? I'd really appreciate it. I'm trying to get this channel going. I'll be back soon with some more film history. Thanks.